I want to lay out my closing arguments about what is at stake in this election. This is as big a choice election as I have seen in my lifetime. It's a choice between Donald Trump, a candidate who says he'll drain the swamp in Washington and bring about real change, or Hillary Clinton, the most corrupt career politician who's ever run for this office. And if she wins tomorrow, probably will face years of intense scrutiny, congressional investigations, and maybe even impeachment. Now, Clinton is the epitome of everything we hate about politics. And while her campaign, they're celebrating FBI Director James Comey, essentially so-called closing the case into a private email server. Let me remind you that the Bureau has been investigating pay-to-play allegations at the Clinton Foundation for the past year and will pursue that probe no matter what happens tomorrow. And by the way, 5 foreign intelligence agencies, they have access to those emails. Now, WikiLeaks also exposed Bill Clinton, Inc. Remember that? The elaborate scheme directly tied to the foundation that Bill Clinton used to fatten his own paycheck, $116 million. And then there's Hillary Clinton's daughter, Chelsea Clinton. Well, she appears to have been using foundation money, which is intended for charity, to pay for her wedding and her living expenses for up to a decade. And according to the Associated Press, remember when Hillary was Secretary of State? 55% of non-government people who met with her, well, they were people that either gave money to the foundation or pledged money to the Clinton Foundation. There's also the tens of millions of more dollars that the Clinton Foundation has accepted from countries that treat women horribly. They kill gays and lesbians. They persecute Christians and Jews, all treated horribly. Not to mention, as WikiLeaks has exposed, the mainstream media is now completely in the tank for Hillary Clinton, and it is way worse than any of us could have imagined, especially CNN, and we'll deal with that after the election. Now, the abusively biased news media barely covered WikiLeaks and the Clinton scandals. So what makes you think they'll actually do it if she's occupying the Oval Office? Now, last night we found out from WikiLeaks that CNN solicited the DNC for tough questions to ask Donald Trump, Senator Ted Cruz, Carly Fiorina. Now, it's pretty clear they'll do anything and everything to protect Hillary Clinton. And speaking of the corrupt media, now they've been saying this race is over, but that could not be further from the truth. I think this race, so all of you understand, this is a winnable race for Donald Trump tomorrow. Now, the path to 270 electoral votes is not easy, but it is possible. Now, back in 2008, if you recall, I tried to warn all of you. I wanted to warn the country about how radical President Obama was. My warnings, they apparently weren't enough. Remember, I tried to warn you about Frank Marshall Davis and Reverend Wright and a Linsky disciple that he was, and Acorn, and, you know, the Church of G.D. America, Bernardine Dorn, Bill Ayers. I was right about how terrible he'd be for this country, and Hillary Clinton, that's going to be more of the same. If you elect Hillary Clinton tomorrow, you're going to get the government you deserve, and guess what? Anybody that helps support her, you own it. Look at the economy, for example, of Barack Obama. The lowest labor participation rate since the 1970s. Almost 95 million of our fellow Americans out of the labor force. The worst recovery since the 1940s. The lowest home ownership rate in 51 years. 13 million more Americans on food stamps, 8 million more Americans in poverty, over 43 million Americans total in poverty. 1 in 5 American families don't have a single family member in the workforce. 1 in 6 men, 18 to 34, prime working years, they're either in jail or living in mommy and daddy's basement. And by the time Obama leaves office, this president will have accumulated more debt than 43 other presidents before him combined. Now, here's how Donald Trump plans to fix this. He's going to lower taxes, reform the tax code. We're going to go from 7 tax brackets to 3 tax brackets. Trump will end the burdensome regulation. He'll push for 4% GDP growth. By the way, Obama, the first president in history not to have a single year of 3% GDP growth. Trump wants to create millions of jobs right here in America, insisting on free and fair trade. He'll incentivize those multinational corporations, and he's going to allow them to bring back not millions, not billions, but trillions of dollars into our economy with a low one-time 10% tax. That means factories and manufacturing centers will be built here. Donald Trump, he's talked about becoming energy independent, the lifeblood of our economy. That means we'll have fewer wars in the Middle East that we'll have to participate in. He'll expand coal mining. He'll expand domestic drilling, fracking, new technologies. Hillary, The exact opposite. Now, she's promised to raise taxes $1.2 trillion, spending $1.4 trillion. She's against lower tax rates for corporations. That means corporations won't invest here. She brags about putting coal miners out of work and coal companies out of business. Remember this.
I'm the only candidate which has a policy about how to bring economic opportunity using clean, renewable energy as the key into coal country. Because we're going to put a lot of coal miners and coal companies out of business. Those people labored in those mines for generations, losing their health, often losing their lives, to turn on our lights and power our factories. Now we've got to move away from coal and all the other fossil fuels.
Oh, great. If you're a coal miner, you're out of work now if she becomes president. Now, she's against domestic drilling. She's against fracking. Pennsylvania, you make a lot of money for fracking, and a lot of jobs have been created because of fracking. She obviously would rather that her Saudi-rich donors, that they get the money instead of Americans getting good-paying jobs and careers. She also supports terrible trade deals. How about the disaster that's Obamacare? It has destroyed America's health care system. Remember, the president and Hillary, they said you can keep your doctor, keep your plan. The average American family would save $2,500 a year. But guess what? We know it's all a lie. Millions have lost their doctors, millions have lost their plans, and on average, the average American family has seen their health care premiums go up on average $4,100 per family. And the White House just admitted a few weeks ago that premiums are going to skyrocket next year by double digits. And yet Hillary, she defends it. Take a look.
The Republicans want to repeal the Affordable Care Act. I take that really as a challenge, because before there was something called Obamacare, there was something called Hillary Care. And we worked really hard to provide universal health care coverage.
Obamacare, Hillary Care, call it whatever you want, a complete and utter disaster. Well, Donald Trump, he wants free market competition to make it affordable for everybody. Competition will help. You get more coverage for less money. Next, the Supreme Court. What has Donald Trump promised? He promised justices like Antonin Scalia and Clarence Thomas. They are originalists. They believe in separation of powers, co-equal branches of government. Clinton wants the exact opposite. Liberal activists who believe in legislating from the bench, people that would cite foreign law to justify their activism. That's not constitutionalism. Now, the choice for our country could not be clearer. Now, let's talk about national security. For example, when it comes to refugees, we've had the FBI director, the assistant FBI director, the director of national intelligence, the CIA director, the former special envoy to defeat ISIS, the House Homeland Security chairman have all said ISIS will infiltrate the refugee population. Like this.
Would that bring in Syrian refugees pose a greater risk to Americans?
I mean, it's clearly a population of concern.
The concern is in Syria, the lack of our footprint on the ground in Syria, that the databases won't have the information we need. So it's not that we have a lack of process, it's there's a lack of information.
And that obviously raises grave concern as to being able to do proper background checks of the individuals coming into the country.
Yes.
I don't obviously put it past the likes of ISIL to infiltrate operatives among these refugees.
We can only query against that which we have collected. And so if someone has never made a ripple in the pond in Syria in a way that would get their identity or their interest reflected in our database, we can query our database till the cows come home, but we're not going to. There will be nothing show up because we have no record on that person.
There is some fear that some of these refugees may actually be posing as refugees, but they might actually be al-Qaeda or ISIS terrorists trying to sneak into Europe or the United States. What do you make of that?
Well, certainly that's a possibility. I mean, you can't dismiss that out of hand.
We should be conscious of the potential that Daesh may attempt to embed agents within that population.
The group is probably exploring a variety of means for infiltrating operatives into the West, including in refugee flows.
Now, even Hillary admitted in private, we can't vet these refugees. In other words, she's willing to gamble with your life. Donald Trump, he supports extreme vetting of refugees, especially ones coming from countries in the Middle East that have a whole lot of jihadists and represent a clear and present danger. Have we not learned anything from Europe? Hillary apparently hasn't. Watch this.
Look, we're facing the worst refugee crisis since the end of World War II, and I think the United States has to do more, and I would like to see us move from what is a good start with 10,000 to 65,000 and begin immediately to put into place the mechanisms for vetting the people that we would take in.
That make you feel safer? What she just said is a 550% increase. So why doesn't Hillary listen to our top intelligence and defense officials? If these unvetted refugees kill you, the American people, attack our homeland, she would be responsible. What about border security and Trump's promise to build a wall? A country without borders is not a country, and Hillary has bragged she wants to build bridges and not walls. Give me a break. Now, people can walk across the border looking for a better life. So, too, can America's enemies. Now, the president's job is to protect the homeland, the most important job they have. But it's not just the country's security that's impacted. There are, what, 11 million, the number of illegal immigrants in the United States? Guess what? That's costing you, the American taxpayer, a fortune, almost $113 billion a year in education, health care, criminal justice costs alone. It's time now to put America first. We can't afford it any longer. Obviously, Mexico won't write us a check to build the wall, but with Trump's tough trade deals, well, hopefully they'll more than pay for it. Now, the military, it is in a drastic decline. It is time to modernize America's weaponry with the most technologically advanced equipment we can develop. Donald Trump has vowed to make this happen. And when it comes to foreign policy, Clinton, Obama, they have such a long list of failures. What about that Russian reset? They gave the #1 state sponsor of terror, Iran, $150 billion so they can continue to spin their centrifuges. What about Syria? What about the Red Line? Well, they did nothing when Assad crossed it. And Obama and Clinton gave Mohammed Morsi, remember him, former president Egypt? He was part of the Muslim Brotherhood. Well, they gave him F-16s and tanks and $1.5 billion of your dollars. Now, North Korea, they don't respect us. China, they have territorial ambitions. They have no fear of the United States under Obama or Hillary. And then there's Benghazi, which happened under Hillary Clinton's watch, 4 Americans dead, and at this point, it makes a difference. And that's not all. The country is divided like never before. And you know what? The people in the front line of dividing this country, rich versus poor, old versus young, black versus white, men versus women, is Obama and Hillary Clinton. How often have we seen them play the race card? She's been pitting people against each other again and again, trying to paint Republicans, conservatives, as being bad for the African-American community. Now, this has all been done to distract African Americans and the American people from the fact that under the leadership of Obama and Clinton, African Americans on food stamps has gone up, look at this, 58%. African Americans not in the labor force, 18.5%. And like every 4 years, Democrats, they play the race card to get votes. Well, Donald Trump has promised a new deal with African American voters. He promises safe communities, high-paying jobs, and a good education. And when it comes to education, what did Trump promise? He said he wants to get rid of Common Core, top-down, NEA education. He'll let you, American parents and teachers and local communities and states, you get to decide how to run your schools. And they'll send education back to you where it belongs. Hillary, on the other hand, free college. Everything's free in Hillary's world. No realistic explanation, of course, how she plans to pay for it all. I'll say it again. This is a choice election. When it comes to the economy, it's Trump who will cut taxes. Hillary will raise taxes. Energy, it's about energy independence, the lifeblood of our economy, or dependence, and that would be a disaster. Obamacare, repeal it, replace it, or keep it and double down on it. I don't think that's a good idea. When it comes to the Supreme Court, hang on one second. This will impact this country for generations. Donald Trump wants originalists. Hillary wants activists, liberal, acorn, Alinskyite sitting on the court legislating from the bench. Fighting Islam, radical Islam. Do you want a commander-in-chief who's not afraid to call out our enemy for what they are and who they are? Refugees, do you want people to be extremely vetted to keep you safe or not? When it comes to the military, should we rebuild it or allow our military to continue its decline like Clinton will take us? What about America's role in the world? Do you want us to be first or not? You okay with America's decline, educating our kids? Should we be, if we're paying the most money per capita, shouldn't we have the best test scores? Or we're like 18, 22, and 25, and we spend more money than any other industrialized country. Now, in my mind, tomorrow is an important day. The answer couldn't be more clear. So if you're in a swing state, if you're in Florida, if you're in Ohio, if you're in Iowa, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, Colorado, New Mexico, Nevada, if you're in Maine's 2nd Congressional District, North Carolina, we need you. It's up to you. You can decide tomorrow to save America from the declining state it is in and stop this downward spiral. That's what this election is about. Tomorrow night, if Hillary Clinton's elected, those who didn't support Donald Trump, voted for Hillary, or never Trump her, I'm telling you right now, you own her Supreme Court, you own her unvetted refugees, you own her tax increases, you own her open borders, you own Obamacare, and you own her energy independence. You will own it.